So you really want to do it?
Heck yes. It's all recorded and ready to go. And it's not as if anyone else is doing it these days. No one's heard from Chicago for months now.
Fine. I just think that Radio 4 should be good enough for anyone. Okay, I'll shut up.
Thank you. Man, I have always wanted to do this. A few months ago, there was an event which changed the life of Samuel forever. We all know the one I'm talking about. It was cataclysmic, heart-wrenching, practically the end of the world. It was, of course, the moment when his beloved axe handle finally broke.
So, Major DeSanta has me out on a routine inspection on the eastern wall. The usual runners have fallen ill, and she wants someone to check its condition, for cracks or water damage or whatever. And I'm thinking that nothing can possibly go wrong because we've got the scanner on. There's still plenty of light. We did a sweep of the area in the morning. When I hear this noise, and I instantly know what it is. Well, the Zom is already rising out of its little cubby hole, which I guess had been uncovered by the stormwaters, and I'm desperately struggling to get my axe out, and I get it out the wrong way, so I'm bashing it over and over again with the handle, not the axe head, and then finally it's dead, properly dead, and I'm totally untouched, not even a scratch, except the handle is ruined. The handle on this axe I'd had for months, right from the start, and I just break down. I can't believe it. I know it's weird to get so attached to a dumb axe, but this thing was my best defender all that time.
Sam's not alone. We've all become attached to something or someone that's kept us alive and safe. Sometimes we choose it, like Sam's axe or Jack's beloved WG cricket bat, and sometimes it chooses us. Well, from WNYZ Radio, it's The Zombie Life, distributed by Abel Radio International. I'm Eugene Woods. Each week, of course, we pick a theme and bring you a variety of stories on that theme. This week's theme, Weapon of Choice. Today's show is in 3 acts, 3 stories from our new world. Act 1, Final Judgment, where Naomi Alderman takes on an age-old legal battle, and I don't mean in the normal sense. Act 2, Those Who Slay Together Stay Together, where Matt Witeska realizes that sometimes being eaten alive isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. And then Act 3, Game Transfer Phenomenon, where Adrian Hahn finds that not everything that Valve teaches you will serve you well in the apocalypse. It's going to be dangerous, it's going to be ugly, but we promise we're here to keep you safe. Stay with us. Act 1, Final Judgment. Now, before the zombies came, there were millions of people around the world who stood toe-to-toe every single day in deadly combat. No quarter was given, no mercy was granted. I'm not talking about the army or mixed martial arts, though. I'm talking about something even more important and painful. Naomi Alderman explains.
So, I used to work for this law firm, big international law firm, corporate clients, state clients.
State clients, that means you represented governments?
Yeah, actual governments. Do you remember when we had those? It was a big deal place. Everyone wore suits, polished marble floors, 17-hour work days. They had bedrooms in the office, so you could sleep there if you were working all night. It was not the kind of place you could show any weakness.
No crying in front of the boss.
Practically no breathing in front of the boss. People covered up colds and flu all the time. Everyone came in when they were sick because, if you missed the big deal, you'd never get promoted. There was one guy who had, this is true, 2 heart attacks. And his secretary had covered them up, so his wife never knew because she'd have made him cut down his hours if she knew.
Showing no weakness.
Exactly, showing no weakness. That was our motto. So, you can imagine, it was pretty much a hothouse. We had no reason to watch the news at work. Secretary brought our lunches to our desk, and often our dinners and our breakfast too. There was one time, I think, I didn't leave the building for 5 straight days. We all lived nearby anyway, barely saw anyone from outside work. All personal calls diverted to voicemail when we were working. We were in the centre of the most populated area in the UK. And we might as well have been in some remote hill farm for all the attention we paid to those wild rumours about, sudden fevers and people biting each other. I mean, we'd all had flu shots paid for by the firm, so we were safe, right?
Right. So then you get called into a big meeting.
Yeah. So on what I now know was officially day 3 of the outbreak, the first day it spread from those isolated pockets, I get called into a meeting. A senior lawyer is pitching for work to a big international bank. Do you remember those? What happened to all that money? And this guy, Casey, his name was, he did not look well. Coughing, pale skin, red eyes.
Animal bite on his neck.
On his wrist. Covered with a bandage. Kept scratching at it. But he's determined to make this deal. Because that's how we're all programmed. Deals first, your own health, or your zombie reanimation status later. So we're all in the meeting, and Casey just keeps going. I mean, we all know the signs now, right? Coughing, and then a brief collapse, or sometimes a bit of a longer one, and then you reanimate. But this guy was so hopped up on caffeine.
He was drinking coffee.
He was chugging back Pro Plus pills with his espressos. He was so hopped up and so goddamn focused on, like, risk evaluations and tax strategies. I swear, his reanimation period was seriously like, he blinked. I mean, one moment he was pushing on through, all red eyes and pale skin, going, and if we examine the tax implications in Delaware, and then he blinks, and while he's still saying the word Delaware, he reaches over and takes a bite out of the arm of the senior partner to his left. And then he carries on talking.
What? No.
I swear to God. Never have seen it before or since. This guy was so goddamn focused. It was like those zombs who, you know, still know how to open doors or climb ladders, because they did that a lot in life. Talking was his thing. So he rapidly stopped making so much sense. It was just a sort of weird, undifferentiated word where he'd go like, advantageous tax system, restructured debt obligations.
And what was everyone else doing?
Well, okay, so of course the usual screaming, panicking, running away from him because he was trying to bite people in the middle of his sentences. And then I saw that my brother had texted me something about zombies, and I was like, I know what this is. People kept trying to help him, of course, so he bit 4 or 5 people in the room before I managed to convince anyone to just barricade those guys in the conference room.
Oh yeah, that must have been hard in the early days.
Yeah, so this was when I really had to use my skills as a lawyer. I remember this moment of standing on the table, swinging a chair wildly from side to side.
Chair fighting, hell on the arms.
No kidding. I was swinging that chair around while shouting to the other guys that Casey was a zombie. And they were going, no, it's not possible. And I had to muster all my resources and seriously do a blooming bullet point list for them. I was like, okay, 1, look what happens when I hit him with the chair. 2, he got bitten yesterday. 3, even if he's not a zombie, he's still trying to bite people. 4, think of the risk implications for the firm if it turns out we were all exposed to a virus in the office. I just kept arguing and arguing, and I think it was that last one that got them in the end. The 3 of us who survived the meeting barricaded the rest of them in the conference room. Got to be a real mess in there. I guess all those years of arguing for a living paid off.
And do you ever see any of those guys now?
Nah. I probably saved their lives, but no one likes it if you beat them in an argument. Do you know what I mean?
Coming up, what happens when your most tried and trusted weapons can't be trusted anymore? That's in a minute from Abel Public Radio and Abel Radio International when our programming continues. We've reached Act 2 of our program. Act 2, those who slay together stay together. This story is told by Matt Witeska.
So, you probably all heard about what happened in Edinburgh, right? Yeah, it wasn't a pretty scene. Through some fluke, some random collision of circumstances, the news hit Edinburgh a couple of days before the plague did. Now, you might think that's a good thing, right? It gives people time to prepare, maybe gives them a better chance of surviving what's coming. That wasn't the case. Panic's a killer. Panic and fear and paranoia. A city full of people arming themselves, holing up, afraid every other person they see is a zombie. It's a recipe for disaster and bloodshed. By the time the plague hit, there were barely any survivors left to infect. Collateral damage, they called it. For those of us who escaped, it was hell. humanity at its worst. That's the story you all probably heard already, though. It's the little details you never hear. The individual stories. Here's the one that stuck with me the most. So, Edinburgh's a university town, right? And Edinburgh University has its own theatre, operated by the students. Bedlam Theatre. Now, when the news hits, this bunch of students, theatre kids, technicians, they're miles away from home, no chance of getting back to their families. They're only young, so they get together in the place they feel safest. The theatre. They stock up with what food they can, barricade the place. They do a pretty good job of it too. Maybe too good a job, as it turns out. These were creative types, technicians, as I said, and they'd rigged up this elaborate system of booby traps to snag any intruders. In all my days, I've never seen anything like this. I'm talking about table saws rigged to drop from the roof, pyrotechnics turned into makeshift landmines, a real Home Alone setup. It would have been impressive if they hadn't gone too far. You see, the final thing they tried to set up, their masterpiece, was an electrified floor trap. They'd taken every piece of wiring in the place, every metal plate or bar at their disposal, and rigged the whole foyer. Any zom, any human steps foot in there, they get fried. Clever, right? The only problem was, this is a really old building, not in the best state of repair. So the first time it rained, water ran right down from the balcony they were all sleeping on, just formed this river right down to the foyer. They were electrocuted right where they slept. Just horrible. I'll never forget the smell of that place. Jesus, the stupid things people do out of fear.
Now we arrive at Act 3 of our show. Act 3, Game Transfer Phenomenon. There are a lot of people out there who talk about Danny Boyle, Saint Danny even, for teaching us how to react in this precise situation. But for those of a certain generation, Danny's films weren't as important as a certain series of games.
So I was a game designer back before the fall, and every month or so I get invited to talk or write about some new calamity, about how games are rotting the minds of our youth, as if that were the most important thing to be thinking about. Anyway, some neuroscientists came up with a bright idea called game transfer phenomenon. And the idea was that if you play games enough, then you'd start to see everything like a game. So if you played Assassin's Creed a lot, you'd start to want to climb up every building you could see. If you played Half-Life 3 a lot all day, you'd start thinking you could time travel everywhere. So the game I was playing was Left 4 Dead. You probably heard of it, first-person shooter where 4 players kill zombies. And back then it had all sorts of crazy stuff in it, like monsters and boomers and hunters and smokers, not like today. Anyway, back then I played a night and day with my buddies, and to cut a long story short, when the zombies came, we were ready. I mean, we knew all about headshots, covering fire, sticking together, gathering supplies, communications, all of that stuff. So when we heard the news, we cycled down to the shooting range, loaded up on guns and ammo, and we got moving. The whole thing was like we'd been trained with the ultimate weapon, a zombie survival simulator. And I'll be honest, it felt great. I mean, it sounds stupid now, I'll give you that, but we saved more than a few people while we were getting out of London. And then Philip says, maybe we should head to Blue Water Mall, try and stock up or even barricade the place, take things back from there. So we cleared out a whole lane of shops, teamed up with some other guys who had the same idea, and we tried to make a go of it. And for the first few weeks it was okay, but then there were just too many zombs and too few of us. People got tired, couldn't do the watches, started making mistakes. And that's when the game transfer phenomenon turned nasty, when Josh just couldn't stay awake. He got some adrenaline from a pharmacy, and he thought that, just like in Left 4 Dead, he could inject some adrenaline and he'd be fine. Instead, he got tachycardia, and, well, that was that. The next day, Alex got bashed around while trying to defend the Apple store. He took some pain pills, which helped some, but not as much as they did in the game. Actually, they slowed him down, and he got bit. I had to put a bullet in him before he turned. I didn't want to think much about games after that. By then, we'd gone from 20 people in the mall down to just 6, and we needed to get out. I was on the team hauling out food supplies from Tesco's when a horde arrived. Dozens and dozens of them, just against 3 of us. And we had an escape route all set up, like you do, through the service corridors, and we barricaded the front doors, but I guess the pressure from all the zombies managed to smash the windows or something. One of them got in. Ellie got knocked back into the drink aisle from the kickback from my shotgun. It was looking bad. So, she wasn't dead, thank God, but we needed to move her fast and stop the zombies. So what did I do? Well, that's right, Molotov cocktail. It's a bit harder to do than in the game. Had to take care not to blow myself up, but yeah, it definitely bought us enough time to carry Ellie back into the service area, get the hell out of there. Something useful. And so yeah, here I am. I'm pretty sure I'm only alive because of game transfer phenomenon, but I'm also sure that Alex and Josh were killed by it. These days I don't really care much for playing games anymore. I don't find them much fun. I just mod them. Turns out there's plenty of work for people like me, and making Left 4 Dead mods to help simulate combat situations for the military types. No smiles from the people playing them now. It's deadly serious work.
Well, our program today was produced by myself, Jack Holden, and Sam Yao. Our senior producer is Richard Bell. Very special thanks to Matt Witeska, Naomi Alderman, and Adrian Hahn for sharing their stories with us. The Zombie Life is distributed by Abel Radio International. Support for The Zombie Life comes from Abel Hospital, providers of medical attention, trauma assistance, and health checkups to everyone in this township. Please donate your time and resources to the hospital. Abel Hospital, what heals you. WNYZ management oversight for our show is provided by our boss, Major DeSanta. I'm Eugene Woods, back next week with more stories from The Zombie Life.